Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. This is Nic Chaillan. We're going to get started in about 15 minutes. Please stay tuned. We'll start at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much for joining us. Hi, everybody. This is Nic Chaillan. We're going to get started at 1 p.m. Thanks for joining us. By the way, if you want to share who you are and share what company you're with, please post in the comments below. We'll be highlighting you on the screen as well. So please do that. Please stay tuned. We're going to get started at 1 p.m. Thanks. Hey, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. This is Nic Chaillan. We're going to get started at 1 p.m. Stay tuned if you want to share who you are and what company you're with. Please post into the comments below. We'll be highlighting you so we can know who is here. And thanks so much for joining us. Thank you. Stay tuned, 1 p.m. We're going to get started. Thanks. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started 1 p.m. again. If you want to share your name and your company on the comments below, we'll be able to highlight you. Thanks so much for joining. Stay tuned, 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Nick Chaillan. We're going to get started at 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, if you join us and you want to share your name and company you're with so we can highlight you, please put it into the comments below so we can showcase your name. And stay tuned. We're going to get started at 1 p.m. with our guest, Jason Knudson. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Nick Chaillan. We're going to get started at 1 p.m. In the meantime, if you want to share your name and your company you're with, we can highlight you on the screen here. Always good to see you guys. Please stay tuned. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes. Thanks so much. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Nick Chaillan. We're going to get started in about 3 minutes. Stay tuned. Like I said, if you have questions, post them into the comment section below. Start with a Q so we know it's a question. If you have a statement or you just want to share you here, please also put your name and what company you're with, and we can highlight you on the screen as well. Thanks so much for joining. Stay tuned. Hi, everybody. This is Nic Chaillan. Thanks so much for joining us in this episode of In the Nick of Time, episode number 2. And I'm going to have a special guest today. But before we bring him on stage with us today, first, I want to remind everybody, if you have a question, please post the questions in the comments section below. Start with a Q so we know it's a question. But then if you also just want to share you here and say hi, you can post your name and company name, what you do. We can highlight you on the screen as well. We have a lot of great people here today. So some people will show up like this as LinkedIn user. It's usually in your settings where you don't share your image and name. So that's just going to show like that, not just to people you connected with, but to everybody, so they can see your name. So just keep that in mind. If you want to change your settings, you can do that. All right. So first, as a reminder, it's always important to be able to reach out to you guys. So please check out the link here, ama.preventbreach.com/register. If you want to register to the Nic of Time event, you can get notifications and invites over by email, so you know what's going on. So please register so we have access to your email, so we don't depend on LinkedIn to do its job of promoting our content, which it doesn't really do good of a job right now. So please go on the link here, ama.preventbreach.com/register to register for the AMA. I'm gonna put it a little bit on the banner so you can check this out. All right. So couple of links wanted to share, and again we'll post the video, of course, is live on LinkedIn, and you can watch it again and pause it to see the links. But I'm going to post also the PowerPoint, so you can take a look at some of those slides here. Okay, but effectively, what you see here on the screen is a couple of stories that happened this week, and I wanted to share this with you today. So take a look at first the another kind of Sputnik moment, in my opinion, which I think is very scary. China is taking data seriously, and of course, data is critical for AI and how we end up sharing right across industry. And they created this Shanghai Data Exchange, just like a stock exchange, but for data. So companies can trade data, but of course, little insight there. Of course, China is able to also get access to the content. So as the CCP wants to expand their access to more companies and more data, they opened this exchange, and now you have dozens of companies contributing to that exchange and selling their content. But of course, keep in mind that this all benefit China as well. Of course, the US is pretty far away from thinking of building a data exchange, and that's something we need to start doing now. Again, trying to play catch up with China. So if you want to learn more, please go on that link, and you'll be able to check that out. And then, another piece of news, the Pentagon announced they're maybe looking at creating a chief data/AI data office, and merging DDS, the Defense Digital Service, the Chief Data Officer office, and the JAKE, the Joint AI Center, into a single team. That's a piece of my recommendation to the secretary when it comes to my op-ed I released last week. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's not good enough, right? It's not bad, of course. It's better than doing nothing, I guess. But as you can see, it is just not enough. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about my op-ed, and then we'll get to our guest, okay? But I wanted to share a couple of thoughts here. First, if you missed it, it was a Financial Times piece, but it's short and sweet, and you have to pay if you're not a member of the Financial Times. Although if you Google my name and Financial Times, you might be able to find it and read it without paying. That's how you bypass the paywall. You can Google it, and usually they let you see the first article. So that's one option. But of course, if you want to read the full, more lengthy book length, people told me, I'm sorry, but I wanted to bring enough tangible detail that the building doesn't turn this into a nightmare of the wrong implementation actions. So wanted to be precise enough, and I have 5 pillars on there. but I'm going to walk you through a quick overview of some of the key concepts here. Okay. So first, how do we catch up with China? Of course, if you don't know, whoever is going to be leading in AI will be leading the world. And so we should take this very seriously. It's estimated that by December 2022, we won't be able to catch up because of the velocity and pace of AI and the volume of data that China has access to. We should already be leaner. We should already be leading. We should already be more aggressive in terms of adoption. Of course, since we have less people, and of course, we're not a communist country, so we don't mandate companies to give us access to their data, which is great. But it's also a piece of advantage that China has over us. So keep that in mind. We need to take action now before it's too late. It's a matter of less than a year now, so time flies. So the first piece to take action, it's all very tangible, pretty common sense stuff. I don't think anyone will have an issue with what I'm saying here, but you never know. If you do, put into the comments below. Love to hear from you. But the first step is we need to embrace Agile. You would think that's already the case since Agile was created 22 years ago, but that's not the case. Not just Agile in software development, but end-to-end Agile, buying capacity of work, not being stuck in time without data requirements. It's already the whole acquisition process, all the way to Congress and how we have access to a lot of money and how we need to guess what we're going to need 5 years from now. This doesn't fly in 2021. Congress also must align to a more agile mindset. So for that to adopt Agile, I find that many people think in the government that Agile is going fast and hoping for the best and falling a bunch, and hopefully you don't hurt yourself too much that you can keep going. But that's not Agile. Okay, that's just people that don't know Agile that think that that's what Agile is about, but it's not. It's about small incremental delivery of value in the hands of the warfighter, where we can learn fast and move fast and don't make the same mistakes twice and don't fail twice for the same reason. And it's because it's small and incremental, you don't end up failing to the point that you can't stand back up. Anyone that says otherwise just does not understand the basic principles of Agile. Okay, so that's not how Agile works. So embracing Agile, of course, will require first the Defense Acquisition University to mandate Agile training instead of the outdated waterfall EVM training that we mandate today. So we need to move to that end-to-end Agile acquisition mindset. We need to embrace DevSecOps, of course, mandated for all new programs that are software intensive and be compliant with the DoD Enterprise DevSecOps reference design. We need also to address basic IP issues and just educate contracting teams a little bit better when it comes to IP. And again, you're going to be able to check all the details on my publication, including adopting the budget activity 8 color of money, which is a single color of money for software. So we don't have O&M, R&D money, and sustainment money. It's all a single color of money. That's step one, getting more agile. Step two, investing in our people. When you don't know what you're talking about, please get out of the way. Empower the warfighter at the lowest level possible. We call this power down, and let the people that do the work and make decisions. You need to not create more silos. The answer is not to have a dedicated AI or cyber team or cyber force. When it comes to defense, that has to be baked into every duty program. So for that, of course, you want to be very nimble, and you want to have it part of every team and not have another silo that just like the Defense Digital Service would have to magically show up with every program and operate in silos, and that just doesn't work. In fact, that's why DDS have failed into most bold initiatives that they tried to implement. So then, of course, we need to start embracing career path for software, DevSecOps, cyber, data science, AI, ML, and have a progression of pay and title with special duty allowances and things like that. We need to work with OPM and Congress to make that happen. They're talking about AI, but they're forgetting that we don't even have software career tracks. So how do you get to AI without even basic software and data science and basic data lakes and warehouses? So again, We need to do it across the entire landscape. Of course, we need to enable people to come and go into the government, kind of pop the DoD bubble so we can get talent coming from the commercial side and go back to industry and come back to DoD. That's very essential. Need to be more nimble and effectively increase the defense industrial base and simplify the clearance process so people can come and go without having this kind of massive impediment of movement across companies, which really slows down and reduce the talent pool that we have access to as well. All right, so now when it comes to a joint team, I'm advocating for something a little bit more broader than just what was proposed by the Pentagon in creating an AI data office. Effectively, we need already what I called in my op-ed something like an enterprise IT office that would merge kind of all transport connectivity, enterprise IT acquisition, cloud, data lake, zero trust, DevSecOps, and AI/ML. So that would include like Platform One, and would include zero trust engagements and Jake and so on into a central enterprise office that will provide capabilities to the warfighter as an enterprise service. Of course, thinking as a company staffed with people that know the stuff and don't just talk about this stuff and have done it before. So that's always very important to keep in mind. Okay. So each value stream, of course, will be agile, end-to-end agile, and we'll be able to have a mixed talent. And of course, we want to prevent vendor lock-in, and we need to open the door to not using a single primes, but every value stream being comprised of multiple companies to come and help bring the right talent. So again, that will take, of course, end-to-end agile, baked in, and cloud, and all that good stuff. And you can read the op-ed. I get into a lot of details into every team and what we should reuse. We shouldn't start from scratch. There's a lot of great pockets of talents that we can empower and scale. And again, we need to put people in charge that know and have experience in the fields of doing these things at scale. So now the fourth item is really enabling better information sharing in public-private partnerships. Of course, we need to stop calling China a near-peer adversary and not releasing to the public enough information on the threat and what China is doing. So we are effectively paying attention to what's going on and take action and hopefully convince companies to come and help us in the fight just by being more transparent when it comes to what we see China do, both on the commercial side and on the government side, and stop overclassifying all this information as well. Once you do that, you want to go back to the days of the Bell Labs of World War II and ARPA, before DARPA became mostly incapable of moving at a pace of relevance because of their inability to innovate and apply DevSecOps to deliver rapidly into the hands of the warfighter. You can be stuck in time for 5-10 years. That's not the pace we can afford to move at. So really, we have to completely reimagine how DARPA and how all the labs pretty much are innovating by embracing that notion of continuous delivery in production and not stuck in a vacuum. So very important to keep that in mind. And then the fifth piece, of course, is essential so we don't fight the wrong fights. If you have not read the book, The Kill Chain by Christian Bros, go read that book. It's spot on every layer. Former main advisor for Senator McCain. So please check the book out. And we need to fight the right fights. We need to start investing. And the Secretary of the Air Force just announced the Air Force is going to be doing 2 autonomous vehicles, drones. That's a great first improvement. That's exactly what we need to start doing. Stop investing into massive, exquisite weapon capabilities that are so expensive that they are tough to maintain, and move to more nimble, leaner, and more autonomous capabilities. And then, of course, we need to be held accountable. And if people keep getting away with making mistakes and tremendous failure, like we've seen in Afghanistan, I think people need to be held accountable. And otherwise, there is no chance of success. You would never see that happen elsewhere. And of course, are we going to be able to defend Taiwan? It's going to be tough, right? When you see all the recent war games, every single time we lost in our Pentagon war games. So what's very clear is that the next war will be massively software defined. So it's not going to be about fifth generation jets. I can tell you that right now, particularly if it's against China, right? So we need to have more cattle-like, leaner, autonomous capability that can be discarded as needed and can be deployed at the edge. Even in space, we have a space base already, be able to deploy these kind of autonomous capabilities anywhere on the ground instead of having to aggregate in Asia to go and fight a fight there, which obviously will lead to dozens of American resources being bombed at sea or remotely, or even, of course, cyber attacks as well. So that's kind of the new kind of fight we want to pay attention to and invest into the right tools to achieve that. So again, if you've missed it, please check out the op-ed here. You're gonna see more details that I can cover here. So now that we talked about that publication, wanted to welcome Jason, and I'm going to bring him up here. Jason, no, we can hear you, just so you know. And Jason is our special guest today. He's a VP of strategy at the Second Front System, and retired naval officer, former PM at DAU. So welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Nick. Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, yeah. It would be great for people that don't already know you, and most of the people already know you. But maybe you can share a little bit about what you've been up to in the last, few engagements you had, both in the military and at DAU, and now at Second Front as well.
Right. So I like to joke that my military career is basically signified by the fact I couldn't hold a job. So I started off enlisted. Doing cryptology, working on aircraft carriers, crossed over and did special warfare as a special warfare combatant crewman, picked up an officer program, got a physics degree out of University of Colorado, worked at NIST for a little while, and then commissioned as a submarine officer and went and through the whole nuke pipeline. Ended up crossing back over into cryptology, worked at Fort Meade for a little while, working some counterterrorism stuff, and then worked back over in the Pentagon, where I started working with a group called the Chief of Naval Operations Rapid Innovation Cell. Got a chance to, at a very junior officer level, work on some big programs and really have autonomy that allowed me to move forward and got me into the innovation track within the Department of Defense. From there, I went out to the Far East. I went to Japan, worked on the 7th Fleet staff as both the intelligence arena and then also as Admiral Coyne's innovation officer. And I ended up my career at DIU. Since then, I started up a consulting firm, worked with several other groups, and found my way over here to Second Front Systems, where I worked as the VP of product and recently was promoted to VP of strategy.
And tell us a little bit about DAU for people that have not heard of it.
Right. DIU was founded out of the Secretary Carter's administration. And the goal was to sort of bridge the gap between what was going on in commercial industry and what was going on in DoD. And so DIU initially had 3 offices, offices in Silicon Valley, offices in Boston and Austin, and they're recently going through a expansion. In addition, the National Security Innovation Network, Ensign, is underneath DIU. And so I worked in the cyber and IT realm. Some of the projects I worked on included creating data lakes for U.S. Transportation Command. Worked with the Navy, building out some strategy in their logistics and IT type infrastructure. had a role in looking at the strategy for the Air Force's enterprise IT as a service, basically the base IT infrastructure, and worked on some projects with the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff in being able to better visualize the strategy based upon your logistics and readiness of the force.
So when you look at DIU scale, right, and you look at kind of their initial vision and mission, how would you say they are succeeding at bringing in, some of the commercial best practices and talent, and is that going at the right scale? What can be improved?
Right. So I'm hugely optimistic for DIU and the Defense Innovation Group. I sort of look at defense innovation efforts coming out of the third offset, which was Secretary Carter's initiative, as kind of going through three phases. The first phase of defense innovation was very disruptive, was a bunch of these one-offs. I include the CNO's Rapid Innovation Cell in that. And really, DIU was at the forefront of that. It was very disruptive. Then you had your phase two, which is sort of the scaling of innovation. That's your AFWorks, basically all of your different workses. And what that was is you had a advocate in the building that was providing funding, and really you'll see large amounts of funding, large amounts of contract flow through those organizations. And what we're really going into is sort of a third generation of defense innovation, and that's sort of the insourcing innovation. In order to build a DIU or to build a AFWorks, money had to come from somewhere. And so that often makes enemies and brings out your antibodies within the organization. What we're seeing is that the lessons have been learned, at least in some part, and the Department of Defense is now saying, okay, we can pick up some of these. We can do things like other transactions, right? We can take the lessons learned from the software factories, the Kessel runs, the platform ones, and we can take them internally. The risk here is that they come back into the organization, and the same reasons why the Department of Defense was not innovative before are the reasons why it won't be innovative in the future. And really, back to your question, I think DIU, AFWorks, Platform One has a role in going forward in guiding the future of how we're going to achieve this sort of defense innovation 3.0. And I think, with Mike Brown in the leadership there, he continues to talk about the danger and the challenge of, peer competition, great power competition with China, the risks we have in Chinese investment in companies in the United States, and the need to work with our partners to build out, build our acquisitions and our partnerships overseas. As long as that thought leadership is going on, I think DIU is going in a great direction.
Did you feel some of the momentum died with some of the people leaving the building? Obviously Dr. Orper was a big deal. And of course, after Secretary Carter left, of course, I also saw maybe, DDS, for example, lose also a lot of his, sway as well.
Yeah, I think there's a desired turnover for innovation organizations. Most innovation organizations, most startups, which are innovation organizations, really have a shelf life of about 3 years. And a lot of them are personality dependent. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we took a big hit with Dr. Roper leaving. We took a big hit with DDS. But as you see in the news today, the consolidation of the AI and some of the IT organizations, that insourcing, if we can take those lessons learned that you and Dr. Roper brought forward and bring them into the system, that's what's supposed to happen. And I really believe that there is a macro cycle that happens within any large organization, and we are in that sort of insourcing, learning from our lessons. And so I'm optimistic about where we're going. I mean, the Air Force in general is way out ahead of the other services in driving innovation. My own service, I'll give a criticism of of the Navy. The Navy needs to reach out and adopt those lessons learned, and we just don't have time to learn everything ourselves in our own silos. So yeah, collaboration. Learn the lessons from what we've done before. Don't relearn things that you don't have to relearn. I also think there needs to be room for a next generation of leaders, right? As you roll off, as Dr. Roper rolls off, there needs to be people who step up. I notice you've been advocating for accountability, moving people out that shouldn't be there. I certainly advocate for that as well. However, it's not just let's just pull them away and create an open gap. Let's identify these people who've grown up in the defense innovation ecosystem, that have gone through these crucibles, who have worked at the Kessel runs, who've worked at the platform ones, the AFWorks, the DIUs. Those are going to be the people that were most likely to be able to drive that impact into the future. And then let's look out into the commercial sector as well. I did a thing with Defense Entrepreneurs Forum called Future Force, or the F5 report. It was a personnel report, and one of our big recommendations was career permeability, the ability to move in and out of DoD and return at a rank that is a rank or a grade that is equivalent to your experience. And if we can create a career permeability going in and out, then we can solve some of these personality problems.
Yeah, no doubt. I guess, what do you think, when we have all these great talent, and I've seen it, Kessel Run and DIU and everywhere else, we still think of many of these people, particularly when they are military, we still think of them as disposable, or they can just go do something completely unrelated. And I feel like we completely wasted their time, doing innovation stuff, and then they go and start doing some aircraft maintenance, or something else like that. Why can't we make the leadership understand that innovation and IT is a career, and is something that they would probably not be doing with pilots, right?
Right. So I think there's two pieces of this. One is the personnel system, and the way we deal with talent is really archaic and needs to be changed. We need to be able to identify talent and retain it. And really the tools to retain the talent. On average, a DoD salary for a military member is actually higher than what equivalent job is in the commercial sector. But for exceptional people, there's no differential, right? If you're exceptional, you're getting promoted at the same rate as somebody who is not maybe performing as well. There is a need to move people through multiple different career paths, but it's not transparent to the individual. It used to be that we would send military officers on sabbaticals, send them over to universities as a regular, get a year or two off and come back in and promote, right? The military, you can make a mistake and still have a career, right? John Paul Jones crashed a ship. Fascinating. Many of our generals in World War II had incidents on a ship that would be career killers right now. We need some tolerance. We need to look at talent management as talent management. And like you said, we're just not just cogs in the wheel. We're shifting as warfare shifts towards a cognitive domain, with artificial intelligence, cyber fighting the fight, and less so kinetics. We're going to need to be able to attract the human talent that can fight in those domains.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned also was interesting when we look at how dependent of some of these initiatives were dependent on Dr. Roper or myself or somebody else, right? And then we leave, and I would argue, I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that stuff sticks after I'm gone, and putting the right people in the right jobs, and not using waivers, and kind of have big, have big kind of solutions and stuff, and trying to see how do we make stuff stick. But yet I'm witnessing that I probably didn't do a good enough of a job. So, and at the same time, people argue, well, you look at SpaceX and companies like Apple and stuff, there was always a great leader. And often when they're gone, I mean, you've seen it with Jobs, I think I would argue there was not much going on at Apple right now. So, I mean, is it a dream to think that, maybe stuff like this can just stick despite not having someone strong in a role, or what how do we solve that?
I think it's a little cliche to say you can do anything in the government as long as you don't care who gets the credit. But in my experience, it really is true. I don't know if anybody's told you this, Nick, but you're kind of a firebrand. You kind of blow things up and leave wreckage behind you,
Yes.
which is great for innovation and charging a new path. Um, I guess
Everybody's not grateful. I know there's a but.
I listen. You are a divisive figure. However, I think the conversation that you're driving at and being able to say the hard things is very important. The question is, and this is what you posed, is who comes behind, and are they going to create things in a way that's going to achieve those objectives. So I truly do think with especially platform one consolidating down and saying, hey, we all don't have to have a different infrastructure for DevOps. It's not that complicated. Let's not all start at zero. Let's
At zero, yeah.
let's move up. We're just still gonna have people going to start at zero.
Sure.
However, when people walk in and they see what you've done so far, and they look at what you've left behind, they're going to take those pieces and they're going to make them into something that's their own. And that's really what we should be looking for success,
Yeah.
right? 2-3 years from now, do the things. Are people making things that have our fingerprints on them? And if they are, we've been successful.
Yeah, no, spot on. I'm afraid sometimes people take a good idea and turn it into a bureaucracy nightmare. So there's sometimes times where I look back and I'm like, damn, I wish I didn't do this stuff, because now it became this ugly policy or governance thing, and now it's a whole debacle for the warfighter. So there's, I guess, sometimes you wish whatever it is you created wouldn't be actually used, but
I
hopefully
think
that's the exception,
that
right?
that goes to your point on creating an agile organization, right? And this is kind of goes to what I talk about in acquisition warfare. We back. I'll just do a little quick history here.
Yeah.
The Department of Defense and Business Management have had perfect. Um, Department of Defense and Business have had a sort of interrelationship for as long as business management has been a strategy, which is basically the 20th century. You had Deming, who's really the father of modern management theory, honed his experience in doing physics work for artillery planning, and doing that planning, he took that to the reconstruction in Japan and took that to building out factories, which really became the Deming method or Toyota method. And in the 1980s, the DoD had a major problem that the things we were buying were very low quality, right? If 1 out of every 100 grenades is a dud or has a bad fuse or goes off early, that's a problem. And so what DoD was looking for was to drive up quality. In fact, all of manufacturers looking to do that. And so in the late 80s and early 90s, they came out with this concept called total quality management. And total quality management was exactly that. It was, let's remove the sources of error, and let's get our sources of error down to 6 Sigma, which the successors to total quality management are Lean Six Sigma, and the ISO 9000 series, right? Like you said, make a document out of it. The entire Department of Defense was trained in it. There was a National Quality Management Institute that was around until the end of the Clinton administration, and we reformed our entire DoD to be a quality management organization, which is okay because that was the cutting edge of management theory at the time. But you move forward and you look at the thinkers who brought around Agile, and Agile is not a software thing, right? You know, the Agile Manifesto was written at a manufacturing conference. It comes out of basic manufacturing and basic management theory. So what we need to do is we need to be able to take our massive complexity that we've got. We've got to break it down into small components, and we need to deal with the risk on each one of those components. The biggest mistake that we made when we looked at quality management was we looked at human beings, and we said human beings are the biggest source of error. So let's use requirements processes, let's use boards, let's use anything we can to remove the human from the system. When you look at Agile and DevOps, what we're doing is we're going and putting the person back in. The user is the center of everything we do. We do user-centered design. And so the solution to be able to really solve some of these issues is for DoD to shift to an Agile mindset, just like you recommended in your article, and then to put the human being, the user, back in the center of the seat. And if we are delivering technology, whether it's software or we're delivering hardware to the user, right, it should spark joy in every single service member in using it, and it should probably deliver negative desired results to the adversary. And if it doesn't do that, that becomes our metric of success, not some Six Sigma or time, cost, quality type calculation. Like, does it do what the user needs it to do when the user needs it to do it?
So, Brennan, he had a great comment here, and I wonder how you reconcile both, because I think it's right in a way, and I think obviously user-centered design is critical to make good products. So how do you make it so, yes, we make the user the top priority when we design a product, but at the same time that we must embrace that ideally, right, everyone is expendable. At least on the battlefield, right? That's already pretty common for disaster recovery and resiliency, right?
I think that the key is at least on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
We run into lots of problems when we apply a single management theory to all aspects of what we do, right? An infantryman on the battlefield, we expect large amounts of attrition. We're also not expecting that infantryman to go and design the next tank, at least not until the next stage of the career, right? You look at the Eisenhowers of the world, the Bradleys of the world. You look at the John Boyds, right? Grace Hopper, Admiral Rickover, Billy Mitchell. These are names of people that are irreplaceable. There's probably 100 of those people to every one that makes it through that are not irreplaceable. And I think we need to differentiate the things that we have irreplaceability with, which are those things we expect high attrition and are repeatable skills. Basically, like our military's version of factory workers, from those that are unique blueprints and those who create. And that's why the personnel system is largely unsuited for your IT workforce and your knowledge workforce, because our critical capabilities we're going to be delivering are often single use, and they are created by who the best minds are, and we are matching up our best minds, whether they're programmers, cybersecurity engineers, planners, or even acquisition professionals, against peer competitors in Russia and China and Iran and North Korea. And they're going to have to, they're going to have to win. They're going to have to be the absolute best. And so this is more of a duel versus a massing of forces. And we want the best fighters to be available for that duel.
Yeah, and I guess when you look at how we acquire and build capabilities now, you've seen some of my recommendations that were in my op-ed. I guess what is missing that I missed that is essential that we didn't talk about.
I think we talk acquisition warfare, so I'll just dive right into my theory that I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
So the thing I've struggled with acquisition warfare is in almost all cases, FAR-based acquisitions, federal acquisition requirements, are sufficient. Whether you're buying toilet paper or building an aircraft carrier or procuring a large-scale IT system, there is no doubt that we can execute the funding we get from Congress to build stuff. And DoD is actually really good at that. And when I did my research for the paper I did with Stan Soloway on the FAR for IBM Center for Business and Government, we talked to many of the senior acquisition officials in the government working on congressional language, and many of them pushed back. They said, "There's nothing I can't do in the FAR that you can do with another transaction," and that's true. And that bothered me, right? It sucks to have a group of people who are executing their jobs well, but they're not quite getting it right. And I went back to an interaction that I saw at an acquisition conference in Monterey between a senior Navy acquisition official and a Navy captain. And the acquisition official had just gotten done presenting how they had achieved cost, schedule, and performance. They had delivered this massive acquisition system on time and on budget and on schedule, and they delivered onto the aircraft carrier. And the captain stood up and said, "That was my ship. I was the one who signed off on that. You did not deliver to me the operational capability I needed. Yeah, you put a bunch of stuff on my ship, but it's useless. It's just a brick. We're in the process of removing it right now." And the senior acquisition official said, "Well, we met everything. We met all requirements, and we delivered it under what the federal acquisition requirements said we needed to do. With fair competition, we protect the taxpayers' money." And the captain said, "But did you read the National Defense Strategy? And are you achieving national security objectives with what you've delivered?" And her response was what shocked me. She said, "It is not our responsibility to read the National Defense Strategy. It is our responsibility to protect the taxpayer." And that blew me away. It seems like there is no operational need, or the acquisition community, in many cases, not all. There are certainly people on this conversation right now who think about operational acquisitions, but acquisitions is not operationally aligned. And so that's a big problem, because if we are building stuff that does not deliver on national security objectives, then what are we doing? We're just building stuff. And so I dug into that a little bit more because it bothered me. And so I started looking through the federal acquisition requirements, what's being trained at DAU, and I started looking at the joint publications. How does DoD fight war? And for those of you who haven't gone through your joint professional military education, the Department of Defense is actually divided into two groups. One is your operational chain of command, and the other one is your administrative chain of command. I'm going to oversimplify this, but the operational chain of command essentially flows from the president to the chairman, joint chiefs of staff, and from the chairman, joint chiefs of staff down through the component commands and out through these joint units combined between the Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, Space Force, and Army. I think I got them all. Keep adding more to the group. And they execute based upon a strategy that gets turned into operational plans and that gets turned into tactics. The administrative side, their entire role is to man, train, and equip that operational side. And so that, what many people don't know is the chief of naval operations doesn't really do operations. He's the head of the acquisition organization of the Navy. The same with the chief of staff of the Air Force, chief of staff of the Army. They all go and have to execute the budget planning and acquisition execution to provide stuff for the warfight. And I thought this was interesting because while the acquisition community is well equipped to respond to the administrative side, there is no actual acquisition system that's responding to the operational side. And so I'll pause right there because I spit out a whole bunch, but that is the problem, is that not that the acquisition system doesn't work, it's that we only have a system that works for one side of what we're trying to do.
So when you look at the relationship between the COCOMs and the chiefs of the different services, how would you describe that? If really the services are focused on the current year of execution of acquisition money, how does this play with the COCOMs?
Well, it's adversarial, but it's supposed to be constructively adversarial. So there's this process called the JSIDS process, which is really the nomination requirements that goes up from the component commands up through a joint process. And then that is what the administrative side is supposed to budget and execute on. That process takes a long time, like 3 to 5 years. So by the time that something gets to the JSIDS process, it may not be relevant anymore. That was okay for things like aircraft carriers, submarines, aircraft. It's not sufficient for software. And so what I found when I was looking through is there's actually places in the history of the United States that we have done operational acquisitions in order to achieve national security objectives. First time was in 1959 with NASA. NASA bypassed their own acquisition system by creating other transactions and used other transactions to in the space race to respond to Sputnik and the Russian missile and nuclear program. Skunk Works in the 1960s came out of some work in the 1940s, created stealth aircraft, precision guided munitions, and was largely outside of the main acquisition system. During Afghanistan, we had the IUD problem, improvised explosive devices, and we responded using OTAs and rapid contingency funding through the Rapid Capabilities Offices in order to develop the MRAPs. And that entire program was developed in a year, developed and scaled in a year. And then more recently, we had our response to COVID, which was a group of folks across the entire Department of Defense, including Army Contracting Command, NIH, FDA, working together on OTs to execute to achieve a national security objective. But every time that we complete those, we go back and those organizations become absorbed by the Borg, by the administrative side, and start having to take on all the administrative requirements instead of being able to focus on the operational need.
Yeah. So why does this have to be always in response to some kind of national disaster or like Pearl Harbor moment? Everybody is saying we're waiting for the next one for cyber and AI. Why are we doing this? In fact, isn't it today the anniversary of Pearl Harbor? I guess so. Why are we waiting for
Pearl Harbor?
Why are we doing this?
And in fact, just on this acquisition thing, the whole concept of Pearl Harbor was the Japanese were trying to knock out the United States' ability to respond for a period of time to their aggression. So they wanted to knock out the asset, the fleet asset of the America's Navy. And when that happened, fortunately, there were a couple ships that were out to sea, and the American ingenuity kicked in, and we were able to produce ships much faster than the Japanese thought we were able to. But that really was an acquisition type thing. In response to your question, why are we always reactive? Well, I think it's because we're always reactive. And we're designed to be reactive. We don't want to this is really the administrative side of things, right? If we are trying to be Lean Six Sigma, we are not going to invest resources in acquisitions that are for future fights. We are going to respond to requirements. We're going to respond to congressional budget issues. What we really need is, on the operational side, we need a group of acquisition professionals that are looking forward, that are saying, hey, I'm here to fight the acquisition war. In the future, I desire the ability to do X, Y, and Z in acquisitions. For example, I desire the ability to do 5G, or I desire the ability to do quantum computing, or quantum communication, or hypersonics. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the principles of warfare. Let's just pick movement and maneuver. I'm going to ensure that I'm going to make investments in foreign countries, and I'm going to ensure that I have access to the companies, the talent, and the skills that are going to make that in the future. And I'm going to make the United States the most attractive force for acquiring those technologies. And really, I mean, I'm now on the outside. It sucks being a government contractor. Like, the barriers to entry and just the engagements that we have are just almost not worth it. The customer service, again, we took the user out of it. I hear some folks going out and saying, hey, these companies should be happy to get $1 million contract with the federal government. No, they're not. Not if they're going to take 25 to 50% of their workforce and put them towards government compliance and responding to government contracts. Those are engineers that are not purchasing. And if they're a venture-backed company, the VCs aren't going to want to invest in a company that's 50% compliance and less than 50% engineering. We need people thinking this way, and it's not the administrative acquisition community. They certainly have a role to play there, but we need people going out and building out tactics and strategies and executing on those in a way that the administrative acquisition community is not and should not.
So, you were saying, we don't have the right setting to start thinking about innovating and proactively investing into the next fights. But I would argue that we're now at a stage where we don't have the capabilities we need for today's fight, not even tomorrow's fight. So how do we get there? And do you think it's just complacency, incompetence, egos, all of the above? What are we missing?
When I was in second grade, I was in this play, and
I want to watch it now.
It's called The Geigo Effect. Yeah, I'm going to use a personal analogy of second grade here. It's called The Geigo Effect. And I'm not going to tell you when this was made, but the principles still here apply. And the principle here is called Geigo. It's called garbage in, garbage out, right? Apply that also to sort of the factory concept, right? A machine will deliver whatever the machine is intended to do. And if you're putting garbage into the system, you're getting garbage out of the system. And so our system right now delivers exactly what we expect it to deliver and exactly what's designed to deliver. It is a false assessment to say that we can deliver new things with the systems we have. And so if we are doing innovation in DoD, the truest mark of innovation is not what comes out the back end. It's have your internal processes changed. If you are conducting innovation, but nothing's changing your organization, you're not doing innovation.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you look at kind of this acquisition warfare concept you got going today, you were talking about the companies, many of them walking away, right, from DoD business deals because it's not worth it. But then we're losing, of course, and reducing the defense industrial base, which compounds the problem because now you're in a tighter, smaller bubble. How, as a business, like, what do you think could be done to? Is it just like, I remember this story where we created the government clouds, and slowly but surely the government regions got behind and behind, and we were never getting the latest features, and everybody was worried about the data, and but people were missing the point that by creating this snowflake DoD GovCloud thing or FedRAMP or whatever, we're putting a massive barrier to entry, right, for companies to do business with DoD, and many decide not to do it. So is it just like all these cyber and security requirements that are becoming kind of the problem?
Again, it's the administrative side trying to solve an operational problem, and they're going to solve it through bureaucracy. And so, and it's
Yeah.
what the machine does. And so let's not blame the machine. We built the machine. Everybody on here needs to just understand. If you're angry about the system, you own the system. I think very few people understand that they truly do own the system that we're operating in, and they have the ability to work it and change it. It may not be enormous change, right? Large scale reform projects have the same problem as large scale projects in general. If they become too complex, they're unachievable. So, taking an agile approach to reform within your organization is important. In terms of the companies, what we need, and this is why I'm focused on acquisitions. It all comes into that contract, right? The application of money is what is going to, it keeps things going. And until we have a nation that doesn't deal with money, which I don't expect that to happen or that to be desirable, money is going to have to change hands. And so what we need contract officers, program managers, lawyers, and warfighters that are in a position where they can apply capital where it needs to be in order to achieve these effects. I'll give you an example. There's been several venture capital initiatives in DoD lately. However, these initiatives are largely not funded in the way that they should be funded, and they are being driven by requirements. The same JSID's requirement process. Hey, go out and find me this new armor for the tank, right? Go find this widget. What those initiatives really need to be is a conversation with a commander, say Indo-PACOM, and saying, I need you to go out and I need you to corner the market of things that are going to be important for the United States in the next, 35 years. I need you to get access to the companies. I need you to access the people, and I need you to create a moat between what we can achieve through our industrial complex and what the Chinese government can achieve. But we're not doing that. We are actually, the Chinese government is fighting a war, and we haven't shown up to the table yet, right? You just saw in the news this week. I can't remember which country it was. I'm sure somebody in the chat will remind us. But an African country defaulted on its loan for an airport. So now China has an airport in Africa. China's seeking Atlantic ports in Africa. The country of Montenegro had a multi-billion-dollar bridge being built. They defaulted on. And so yet to be seen if China is able to get a Mediterranean port in Montenegro. So, like, is the United States executing in this way, right? Are we using not just economics, but are we actively going out and anticipating our acquisition needs and treating acquisitions as if it was part of the military? Or are we putting the contract officers, the lawyers in a back room and saying, hey, that's cute. Once the warfighters are done talking, you can come to the table and you can buy us stuff. That's not going to work.
Yeah, I think the country was Uganda. So Uganda.
Uganda, thank you.
Yeah. Although China pretends that they're not going to take it over, but we can of course believe them, like we always do.
I mean, there is physical control, and then there's de facto control, and you'll see in the telecoms in Africa, especially, and likely in that airport, that you'll have de facto control of those assets, not necessarily actual control.
So you've seen it also in Afghanistan, right, where China was smart enough to invite the Taliban before they even took over the country to negotiate the mining rights. Meanwhile, we lost 20 billion of equipment and thousands of lives, and now they walk away with all the mining rights. This is another way to fight wars, and people push back when I say we are already in a war with China. What's your take on this?
Well, I'd say the U.S. does recognize economic in their dime strategy, diplomatic, industrial, military, and economic. That is largely executed by the Department of State and Department of Treasury. The reason why I'm bringing this into the DoD is that there are some uniquely and if you look in Joint Publication 1, the definition of war is a socially sanctioned violence to achieve a political purpose, right? And everybody thinks violence is throwing a bomb on somebody, but it is going in and forcefully taking control or forcefully putting in your desires over the adversary in the absence of diplomacy. And so there are several places that we can be doing that or setting the conditions by which we could do that, right? We're not in a hot war right now. We shouldn't be going in and bombing ball bearing factories. But in the phase 0, phase 1, shape and deter phases that we find ourselves, probably 0+ right now with China, we can be doing theater shaping operations using acquisitions. We can be doing deterrence operations using acquisitions. And that is not the domain of the Department of State or Department of Transportation or Department of the Treasury. That is clearly the domain of the U.S. and in the global economy. Those need to be levers of power that we can push.
So, when you look at China right now, right? Some of the cyber offense stuff they're doing to U.S. companies and the U.S. government. At what point does this, pass the line of war? I guess. When do we start saying that cyber offense is effectively an act of war?
I mean, that is the question that we have to ask ourselves. And the determination of an act of war is a political one. It's in the Constitution. The Congress traditionally has extended declarations of conflict by the president. And so likely it would be a presidential declaration supported by Congress. But I'm going to half punt on that. It is not for me to determine what that definition is. I will say that cyber operations can cause kinetic effects. As Josh Steinman had pointed out, right? Our industrial control system is a cyber system. and it is connected into our conventional internet system in many places. And so, if somebody opens up a floodgate on a dam, or knocks out power in the power grid during the middle of winter during a nor'easter, people will die, and they will die at scales much higher than what happened the last time we went to war with the Twin Towers. So
Yeah.
We absolutely need to be considering at what point a cyber effect would cause us to go to war.
So, but don't you feel like it's already a past due conversation? I mean, shouldn't we already know the answer to that question?
Oh, we should absolutely have our conditions set for that. And if we don't, bad on us. Let's get back in the war room and figure it out.
And what do you think is the risk also, when it comes to attribution of cyber offense events? We use different mechanism of indicators and different things, right, to say, oh, that was China or Russia. I would argue many times a pretty advanced nation state can pretend to be another nation during the entire attack. Like, would that increase the risk then to start saying, well, that's an act of war? We then think it's China, but it's not China. Like, that's a very slippery slope.
Yeah. So I think when I look at this, I go back into my submarine engineering and our damage control. The way we design our systems and the way we do cyber response, we're looking to pass blame first, right? Hey, go out there and do forensic analysis and find out who attacked us so we can go and do this. And we'll shut down a system for 6 months to be able to do that, right? What we haven't done is we haven't developed cyber resilient systems, right? On my submarine, right, our steam system had a backup. Everything has a backup. And if there's an issue, I'm able to isolate and secure that system, bring on a backup system, even if it's lower performance, fix the system that's affected, and then bring it back in a controlled manner. I'd say that our cyber systems are not really designed to be resilient in a damage control type manner. And so what we're left with is, after we've been decimated and after all of our information has been stolen and after our systems are completely knocked out, all we have left is the ability to try to assess blame. If we fought our cyber systems like we fought a conventional engineering system and designed them so that they were cyber resilient, we would have room to be able to continue fighting through while we assess who's attacking us. But right now, all we can do is try to assess blame, and I don't think that is the best strategy for us going forward.
Yeah, so we talked about acquisition warfare, and you talk about the pain that your company and you on the contractor side now felt, right? Tell us a little bit about what your company is focused on now, and what are they trying to achieve?
So basically the core thing that we're working on is we're all national security professionals, whether we are in the contracting realm, whether we're in DoD, in uniform, or DoD civilian, whether we are working Department of State, as long as we're working on national security issues, we are national security professionals. And national security professionals like us deserve the best technology that's aligned with national security objectives. And it really bugs us that there are these barriers to doing business and to making this happen. So what we're working on right now on the front end is we're building tools for due diligence to be able to assess companies and de-risk de-risk finding new companies and doing business with them for the government. And on the back end, we're working on cybersecurity tooling to support those national security objectives. I don't want to turn this into a real advertisement for Second Front, so I'll just say, if you go to our website, secondfront.com, we've got amazing web folks, marketing folks that lay it out way better than I can. But the core of what we do at Second Front is we go after these hard, intractable scene problems, and we solve them using tooling and using our national security expertise in order to do that.
Yeah, and you're hiring, so there's a career page there. And just for everybody clarity, Second Front is not paying us to display any of that information. So this is just something I'm willing to do because I know those guys are already trying to make a difference for our nation, and there's no paid advertising here. But tell us also about Game Warden a little bit, because that's something that also got me intrigued when Enrique, who was the founder of Casaran, that now works for you guys, kind of reached out a year and a half ago to tell me more about that product.
Right, and it's amazing to have Enrique on the team. It's like I said, there's those people who have been built around the crucible of these innovation ecosystems that really are driving things. So what Game Warden is, it's a fully managed and compliant DevSecOps platform that helps accelerate software delivery to the government on the commercially facing side. So the problem we're trying to solve here is a company building software and achieving their contract and going to the government and saying, "Hey, we're ready," and then they say, "No, you're not compliant. You can't get on platform one. You can't get on. You have all these security requirements that you want to do." So what we're doing is building out that fully managed and compliant DevSecOps platform.
And so you're hosting it, and it's Impeccable 4 to begin with, right?
Say that again.
And you're hosting it, and it's Impeccable 4 to begin with in terms of accreditation, right? You're starting
right.
off.
Right. What I'd say is before we get, I don't want to go too deep into the technology stack here. So there's a sign up on our website. Head on over there. Put your email in, and we'll send you a full prospectus. Somebody give you a call.
Are you going to spam people?
What's that?
Are you going to spam people?
I do not spam people. We do not.
Just messing with you.
If you're in the national security space,
I spam people, so
you spam people. I noticed.
Oh yeah. I just bombard them with invites
on off of my LinkedIn feed.
In the Nic of Time stuff going on, so.
Well, hopefully this drives some more conversation to the Nic of Time. Hopefully get some people over here who aren't talking history all the time.
Yeah, wanted to remind people because maybe they can't read on the screen and maybe they're sleeping already. But if you guys have questions for Chaillan, now is the time. So make sure you put it into the chat. I do have a couple of questions for Jason, but we did cover a lot of ground already. But I'm trying to also understand, honestly, when it comes to engagements, larger engagements, right, with industry, if you had one or two key recommendations to push to, the Secretary of Defense or the Deputy Secretary of Defense in terms of what could be done to remove the barrier. What's the biggest pain you guys had to go through to start, doing more government work?
It's the contract process, understanding that, and on the back end, it's the IT compliance. We're a software product company.
Yeah.
Those two things are sort of hidden behind walls and not really well understood. From the contract side, this is something that we really tried to design into DIU as it was standing up, and it was a different way of communicating. To go tell you a quick anecdote. The CNO's Rapid Innovation Cell had a role in the founding of DIU. We went out on a trip to Silicon Valley, talked to a whole bunch of CEOs, venture capitalists, and asked them, "Hey, do you do business with the DoD? If not, why?" They basically laughed at us. They said, "Why would we ever do business with the DoD?" The venture capitalist said, "I would not invest in a company that's doing business with DoD. That is a negative indicator." The CEOs of the company said, "I can't invest in the compliance, and I don't even know where to go." Then you go and you talk to a government person, and they say, "Oh, we can't talk to industry because of this FAR clause, or this FAR clause, or I'm scared, or my contract official says I can't, right? Or I'm going to get sued." I think the number one thing, and this is what DIU was originally, is stood up to do, and probably the biggest success of DIU so far, is that government and industry have to be able to have conversations and have to be able to talk and be able to share the information. And if I was going to give a recommendation to the Department of Defense, the Defense Acquisition University, and I'd say even down to the acquisition officials working in the program management shops, you need to put out clear guidance that DoD and the federal government can talk to folks. You need to revise whatever statutes and whatever that prevents good faith conversations. And we need to get back to communicating as a country with each other. Because if we don't, right, it's way too easy to take Chinese money and go somewhere else. And most of those companies really do want to do business for their country, for the United States, and to support freedom and democracy. I don't know many companies that have taken Chinese money that don't regret it later or don't wish that they had an option that was local. Communication.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And I've seen many companies get burned with China. I would, as an investor myself, I would find that to be a negative indicator too, if they decided to do business with the Chinese government. So I guess
I find a bunch of companies that just don't know any better as well, right?
Yeah.
You're an early stage startup. You're trying to get your next round. Somebody comes in with a big fat check. Nobody has told you that Chinese investment is good. You're not a NatSec expert. All you are is an engineer straight out of college. You take that money and all of a sudden you run into CFIUS problems. You can't engage in the way you wanted to. DoD won't even touch you. That all gets solved by communicating.
Yeah, no, that's very very true. Well, I wanted to remind everybody again, if you have not registered for the in the Nic of Time mailing list, please do that so I can send you invites. ama.preventbreach.com/register. Any parting words, Jason, before we let you go?
I'm not sure if I got to all the questions that were there. I'm willing to answer a question or two and then move on.
We did answer a couple already. I don't see new ones. I guess there's one question we didn't answer, so I can bring that one up. That's the last one I think that I see on the screen. The question is, how do we beat the Chinese? How do we get the Russian as allies, if that's even a thing?
Yeah, I think
can we even do that?
I think I'll take the advice from a quote from Princess Bride. That one of the biggest mistakes is to create a land war in Asia, right? And China and Russia are both in Asia. The best we can hope for is a healthy tension between our countries and mutual respect. We do that through strength of our own country, through strength of our economy, through our key differentiator and advantage is innovation, and we offset the things that they're doing. And as long as we are healthier than they are, we should never get into a hot conflict with China or Russia. I don't recommend it.
Yeah. And I guess, Troy was saying, we pay for the same products more than once all the time because of the DoD silos and egos and whatnot. Will CMMC 2.0 help? And I'll give my answer after yours, I guess.
All right, so I'm gonna give a short answer because I want to hear your answer, Nick. CMMC is trying to do the right thing. I am against checklist compliance, and so I haven't seen CMMC 2.0, but I believe CMMC 2.0 would be well advised to incorporate automated checking and automated compliance, standardization, and really consider the cost they're imposing on industry by what they're doing. There is a model here where cybersecurity is cybersecurity, especially at a defense level, is a benefit to a company. However, basic checklist compliance is not.
Yeah. And so I guess my answer is no. First, I start with no, because anytime you add more requirements done in a vacuum, particularly when it's only helping one threat agency right now, which means you only have to do CMMC for the DoD, and you don't have to do it if you go to DHS or DOJ or whatever the gov agency. That's a massive barrier to entry. That's reducing the access to companies. Like Jason said, creating additional controls, lack of automation, lack of actual outcomes, cyber outcomes instead of cyber compliance checklists. That's just very scary. It's also not designed based on the zero trust principle. So a lot of the controls are outdated if you were to implement zero trust. So it's 2.0 is a vast improvement. And in fact, I non-concurred on 1.0, and most of my recommendations were made into the 2.0. But my bigger recommendation was also to make it part of NIST and part of the broader government and automate the heck out of it. And so that's still not the case. So that's a problem. So 2 more questions for you, I guess, if you're willing. If you were king for a day, what would you do to solve this mess?
I would set up a parallel acquisition operations unit that's integrated in with the operational chain of command that sits in the strategic planning, the operational planning, and execution of missions. I would staff it with contract officers, program managers, lawyers that are sort of get to yes people. I would train them, and I'd train them in joint warfighting. I would have them participate in war games at the War College, and I would begin implementing an acquisition warfare acquisition operation strategy in support of the joint strategy and joint operations, just like the cyber strategy is implemented, information warfare strategy, special operations strategy, fire strategy. It just becomes a part of a robust doctrine. And then once we've cut out that tension in the acquisition system, go back in the acquisition system and then reform it.
So do you think long-term, the idea of kind of breaking that wall between the administrative side and the co-coms, and I mean, that makes no sense to me to have such a wall, right?
Right. The reason there's a wall there is you don't want the things that happen in garrison to affect your stuff out forward, right?
Yeah.
You don't want.
Yeah, but you don't want a vacuum too, right?
And that's what the requirement system is supposed to solve. What I really think needs to happen is we need to embrace agile and user-centered design. And with user-centered design,
so it's overall of the requirement process then.
Yeah, if your man train equip group are directly seeking input from your operations group, and there's a robust dialogue between the two of them, we're going to create permeability between the silos, and we'll be able to manage this. As long as you have to go up and over and back down, you've got a 3-year delay between what people need and what people get.
I see. And last question for you, and I can take some of it too, but can NSA attempt to break into companies with a check? I think they kind of do that with In-Q-Tel, but
NSA's role is very well defined within the IC, signals intelligence, cyber intelligence, and information assurance. So if it doesn't fall into that, I don't see what NSA can do unless they're given special authority by Congress. Yeah. The organization that is able to affect the finances of organizations is the Department of the Treasury, and they usually do that in coordination with other organizations.
But In-Q-Tel is kind of the IC investment arm, right? So they kind of do that check piece by investing in organizations, right? Pretty early on.
Yeah, well, I talked about the need for a venture capital arm of the Department of Defense. InQtel is the model for an IC based.
So do we need an NQTL for DoD?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think DAU could do that?
DAU?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it's probably managed at the same level. I think it's managed. Did you say DAU or DIU?
DIU. DIU.
DIU is working on some efforts like that. I think that's a good place to look at it. I would say it probably sits in the RDT&E portfolio. So I'd almost want this to be significant enough to have its own entity. But I'll leave that to Mike Brown and the rest of the department to figure out what the organizational structure of that is.
Yeah.
It also looks like a public-private partnership. The people of the United States should be able to invest in defense and invest in investment in defense. Yeah. Much like the retirement funds fund the venture capital, the people of the United States should have a stake in our defense.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Jason, wanted to thank you again for being a guest on the show today. It was great to see you as always, and I'm sure everybody's excited about this session. And like I said, if you've not registered already, register at ama.preventbreach.com/register to get the invites for the next AMA. I'm kind of debating if we're going to do one on the 21st. It's kind of very close to Christmas, so we're going to probably skip that one and go to next year. We'll see. But we have a lot of great guests. I do have one coming up that I'm going to announce though, and I think that's next week. So we're gonna skip the 21st. But let me check the invite. I think, of course, I closed my schedule because I don't want the beeping of my emails bugging me. So I think the 14th. Yeah, so the 14th, we're going to have a special guest, Jeff McCoy, former Platform One Kessa Run Space Camp founder, and now Defense Unicorns, will be on at 1 p.m. on Tuesday next week, the 14th. So keep that in mind if you want to talk to Jeff. He's very technical, so he's going to get into Zolf and all the cool stuff he's been doing at Platform One. So if you want to talk tech and no more acquisition boring stuff, just kidding. Jeff will be your next guest next week on Tuesday. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Nick.